Welcome back. We start our bulletin with Pakistan, which says the United Nations has called the situation in occupied Kashmir tense since August 5th revocation of its special status. The UN Security Council discussed the situation in occupied Kashmir in a closed-door meeting in New York. The second round of closed-door consultation since August 5th was requested by China. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the body noted excessive use of force, tear gas, rubber bullets, and killings in the valley. He thanked China for convening the UN Security Council session. Qureshi said Kashmir issue is on the UN agenda, which negates Indian stance that the issue is internal. Talking to media, China's UN ambassador Zhang Jun said Kashmir issue is always on the agenda of the Security Council. Russian acting permanent representative to UN Dmitry Polyanskiv said Moscow stands for the normalization of ties between India and Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan has discussed the humanitarian crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi met Guterres in New York. Qureshi exchanged views with Guterres about gross human rights violations by the Indian forces in occupied Kashmir. He also apprised Guterres of Pakistan's steps to defuse tensions in the Middle East amid the US-Iran standoff. He informed the UN Secretary General about his recent visits to Saudi Arabia and Iran. In India, as many as 14 states have refused to implement BJP government's controversial Citizenship Act. The law, widely perceived as racist, has triggered countrywide mass protests and clashes, costing 27 lives since it was passed in December. The states against the anti-Muslim law include Punjab, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Andhra Pradesh. State governments have declared the law divisive and violation of Indian constitution and basic human rights. Meanwhile, Jamia Millia University has moved the court against Delhi police for their action on December 15th inside the institution. Huge violence broke out after police tortured students for protesting against the new act. Moving on to Syria, where 18 people have been killed after government airstrikes hit a vegetable market in Idlib. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says 20 others were critically wounded and warned the death toll may rise. It said 2 children and a rescue worker are among the dead. The attack destroyed several vehicles, leaving the burned bodies of motorists trapped inside. The strikes have ended the Idlib ceasefire brokered last week by Russia and Turkey. The US has criticized the strike, saying Washington will take diplomatic measures against the Syrian government and its allies. The war in Syria has killed over 380,000 people since 2011. Meanwhile, Israeli warplanes have bombed the Gaza Strip. The Israel Defense Force says its jet struck Hamas posts in retaliation to rockets fired from the area. Severe damage was caused to Hamas military posts and facilities. Medical and firefighting teams have been on alert and sent to the damaged buildings. No casualties have been reported so far. In the occupied West Bank, Israel has announced the creation of 7 nature reserves. Palestine has criticized the move, saying the step is an act of land confiscation meant to take over large areas of the territory. In Lebanon, 35 people have been injured after police fired tear gas to disperse protesters laying siege to Russia's embassy in Beirut. The activists in turn threw stones at security officers, forcing them to retreat. Witnesses say several journalists are among the injured. The embassy's press service said embassy employees were not injured in the violence. It said the embassy was not the crowd's target. The demonstration started in October against alleged government corruption and inefficiency. We're taking a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. US and South Korea have failed to reach a comprehensive deal over defense cost sharing after the final round of talks ended in Washington. South Korea's foreign ministry says the two sides have agreed to work to conclude negotiations at the earliest. Seoul's chief negotiator Jong Yen-bo and his U.S. counterpart James DeHart met for the sixth round of talks. The Korean Foreign Ministry said the two sides broadened their mutual understanding but confirmed that there are still differences. South Korea insists that talks should be conducted within the framework of the existing agreement. The meetings focused on expenses for the upkeep of 28,500 American troops stationed in the country. The US and China have signed a Phase 1 trade agreement to ease the trade war that has rattled the world economy for nearly 2 years. The deal was signed by US President Donald Trump and Chinese Vice Premier Liu at a White House ceremony. Under the agreement, China will strengthen intellectual property rules and boost imports of US goods by $200 billion over 2 years. President Trump said both countries are correcting the wrongs of the past and delivering a future of economic justice and security. Chinese Vice Premier Liu He said the agreement is rooted in equality and mutual respect before defending his country's economic model.
This is mutually beneficial and a win-win agreement. It will stabilize global economic development, promote world peace and prosperity, and it is in the interest of the producers, consumers, and investors in both countries. At the same time, this agreement is not directed at or will affect the lawful rights and interest of any third country. It is in line with the rules of the World Trade Organization.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence said discussions on a Phase 1 trade deal have already begun. For more on this, we are joined by Aina Tangent, China-based political and economic affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us. Now, Mr. Tangent, with the U.S. and China signing the deal, how far can the rest of the world take this as a sign that economic life will return to normal?
No, if there's an old normal, the new normal will probably involve quite a bit of distrust between these two powers. This is more of a truce. If you read through the 92-plus page document, you'll see that it's more like a memorandum of understanding. There are some big numbers that I think Donald Trump wanted for his political side. And there's this snapback agreement, which is kind of a buzzword that the U.S. has some sort of retaliation. But in terms of China, they could walk away from the deal entirely, and then we're back to square one. So a lot remains to be seen how it's implemented, and if, in fact, these two want to cooperate with each other. You'll note that Donald Trump only talked about the U.S., whereas the Chinese side was more talking about the global situation and how that would affect everybody involved.
Now, Mr. Tangent, which agreeing to purchase $200 billion of U.S. goods and strengthen its intellectual property rules, how fair is it to say the U.S. has won the trade war?
Well, the intellectual property rules have actually been being strengthened. In fact, there is nothing actually in the new document which hasn't already been implemented. People can say that that was in anticipation of this agreement, but the fact is that China has been making great strides. Remember, China is now the largest filer of intellectual property rights in the world. They now have skin in the game. This was not true in 2001. And they're very interested in protecting the rights. So I think that solves itself. In terms of the big numbers, we'll have to see. Remember, for example, in agriculture, in 2017, which was the height of the agricultural trade between China and U.S., China only imported 24 billion. It's hard to see how you could get 40 billion because of capacity issues. Remember, farmers cut back on the amount they're growing over the uncertainty. So there's not a lot of excess capacity where they could ship that to China. So it remains to be seen how that will work out.
You say that Beijing has actually gained something through this deal. And what exactly is that?
Yes, I think they have. They've gained time. They're trying to steady the ship. Remember, we are on the cusp of a recession. whether it's this year or next year, it's pretty clear that there's going to be some sort of economic realignment. I think China wants to get its ducks in a row, and it would like to see both regionally and globally a much stronger trade system, something more going back to the norms of the WTO than this kind of law of the jungle of me first.
On economic realignment, thank you, Aina Tangent, China-based analyst, for joining us live. Moving on, France says it will discuss U.S. military support for its forces in the Sahel region amid growing concern at the U.S. withdrawal. Armed Forces Minister Florence Parly said she will soon visit Washington. Parly said Paris counts on Washington's support for success in the region. The U.S. has called for a reduction in the number of UN peacekeeping troops in Mali. Militants linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS have strengthened their foothold in the region, making it ungovernable and fueling ethnic violence. France has over 4,000 troops in the Sahel, and the U.S. provides them intelligence, logistical, and drone support. In Russia, the lower house of parliament will hold a preliminary session today to consider Mikhail Mishustin for the position of prime minister. Speaker of the State Duma, Vyacheslav Volodin, said all members of the lower house will question Mishustin before the session. Volodin said the vote on constitutional amendments proposed by Russia's President Vladimir Putin will take place in September. Putin has signed a decree to establish a working group to prepare proposals on amending the Russian constitution. Russia's account chamber said the implementation of new social and economic measures will require $6 to $8 billion annually. Yesterday, the Russian government resigned after Putin announced plans to change the constitution. Japan has confirmed the first case of a fatal coronavirus infection was previously reported in China. The health ministry says a man in his 30s from Kanagawa Prefecture, southwest of Tokyo, has tested positive. Health officials say the man had been to the Chinese city of Wuhan, where there has been an outbreak of a new strain of coronavirus. They say he arrived in Japan with a fever and was taken to the hospital. On Monday, a Chinese woman was also quarantined in Thailand after contracting the virus. The World Health Organization has warned the new virus can spread and alerted hospitals worldwide. It has been 2 years since China announced strict limits on waste imports. Since then, waste management in the European Union has been thrown into chaos. Much of the union's trash is now sent to Portuguese landfills, but the citizens of Portugal say their country cannot take any more. Details in this report.
This landfill receives rubbish from across Portugal. It's only one of 11 sites in the country allowed to take refuse from abroad. Portuguese people complain their country has become Europe's rubbish bin in the last 2 years.
When
the quality of life is taken from us and the right to breathe fresh air is taken away, then I think the essential and fundamental rights of the human being are hurt.
In 2018, the country took 330,000 tonnes of amber list junk, which includes waste containing hazardous substances. That's a 53% jump from 2017 levels. A third of the toxic trash was dumped into landfills, and the situation is only getting worse.
What does our country gain from this type of business? This is nothing. This is making our country a rubbish bin. We don't even know very well what comes from other countries because it doesn't come from just one country alone.
A recent directive from Brussels orders all EU states to drastically reduce landfill use by 2035. The European Union exported 41.4 million tonnes of garbage to non-EU states in 2018, a 69% increase over 2004.
Pakistan's city of Lahore, capital of the Punjab province, has been declared among the safest cities of the world. A survey by global database Numbeo shows the city is safer than Paris, New York, Berlin, and Chicago. The survey shows Lahore is ranked 230th out of 374 cities of the world for January 2020. It was placed at 174th in January 2019 and moved to 202nd with an improvement of 28 places in mid-2019. Karachi, the largest city of Pakistan, also improved by 22 places on the list and moved from 66th position to 88th. According to Noembo, an increase in a city's ranking means a drop in its crime rate. 4 British rowers have won the Atlantic Challenge by rowing across the Atlantic in just over 32 days. Britain's Ollie Palmer, Tom Foley, Hugh Gillam and Max Greet manned the boat named Fortitude 4. How they did it, this report will tell you.
They arrived into Antigua's English harbour late on Monday night. Fortitude 4 began its journey on December 12th from the race's starting point in Canary Island. It took the 4 rowers 32 days, 12 hours and 35 minutes to win what is considered the world's toughest rowing race. Ollie Palmer said he was unable to describe his feelings.
Words won't be able to sum up what we've gone through, how we feel, what we've just experienced, seeing all our friends and family. Yeah, words can't do it justice, but like the memories we've got out there and just now will last for a long time.
Australia's 4 boat called Road Less Travelled is set to finish second, roughly 48 hours behind Fortitude.
How many mosques are there in the world's most populous Muslim majority country? In 2013, the Indonesian government made a team of 1,000 mosque hunters who visit every corner of the country trying to answer this question. So far, they've documented over 500,000, but the task before them is not even close to being finished. This report has more details.
Counting the exact number of mosques in Indonesia is no small task. 90% of the country's population is Muslim. It is estimated there are 740,000 mosques spread over Indonesia's 17,000 islands.
What we are also gathering is data related to whether a mosque is exposed to radical ideology. We also want to see the geographical distribution of mosques exposed to radicalism. This is helpful to address the radicalism problem in the Indonesian society.
The mosque hunters use drones to take pictures of newly counted mosques and then upload them to an online database. This is a necessary exercise because Indonesia's reputation as a hub of moderate Islam has been tested in recent years. In 2018, Indonesia's intelligence agency found dozens of mosques spreading radical ideology. There have also been terrorist attacks carried out by the local ISIS affiliates.
Data about the number of mosques in Indonesia is questionable because there are a lot of mosques undetected by officials, especially in regions where Islam is a minority.
The mosque hunter hoped to finish the official count by the end of 2020, but new mosques are popping up all the time, making it hard to keep track of them. As such, Indonesian authorities could have a hard time reclaiming the country's religious narrative.
Stock markets in Asia are trading mixed as investors speculate over Phase 1 trade deal signed between the US and China. The stocks are recording muted gains as amid reservation over continuation of certain US tariffs on China's exports. Seoul's Kospi is trading 0.5% higher as Samsung shares advanced over 1.5%. Hyundai stocks jumped nearly 3.5%. The Shanghai Composite is trading fractionally lower. Nikkei 225 and Hong Kong's Hang Seng are trading flat amid lack of stimulus. Meanwhile, international oil prices have gained 0.75%, paring last week's losses. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.